a little piece of pork. It's all they were asked to do. Eat this little piece of pork. From our first reading. The Jews who were facing persecution there in the late days of the kingdom before the Romans came along, the Jews are forced to worship false gods and to abandon the laws of Israel. And to demonstrate that, all they were asked to do is to come forth publicly, take a piece of the pork and eat it. Because the persecutors know, their captors knew, that pork was considered an unclean animal by the Jewish law. And therefore they were not allowed to touch it or to eat it. And so as this family comes by, it's a large family, a mother and her 7 sons, and we hear about 4 of them today. As they come by one, they are brought up there and asked, do this. Now it seems that eating a little piece of pork, violating the dietary law on the one occasion, isn't that serious of an infraction against God's law. That we could do this, they'll move out of town, and then we can go back to our old way of life. But for these Jewish people, they realize that even the smallest infraction to preserve their life, to save their life, and then to continue on, destroyed their relationship with God. That they would not please a human being in favor of pleasing God. When they looked at it in that perspective, it became clear, I can't do that. Some may say that it's not that serious, but I'm pleasing a human being over pleasing God. And that is a big deal. That does make a difference. And furthermore, these Jewish brothers realized that if they did this thing, broke the dietary law, it was more than just breaking the dietary laws. They were communicating to their brothers and sisters, to their Jewish fellow countrymen. They were communicating that it doesn't matter. That you can live your faith whenever it's convenient. That faith isn't really about changing one's life. It's about filling in the gaps of the rest of our lives. That really, everything else that I do is more important, and then my faith, well, I plug it in wherever I can. And they realized that they would be communicating the wrong message. Scandal. It's called the sin of scandal. When we do something that appears one way and communicates something totally different. And it shakes the faith of others. And it breaks the faith of others. And it is a dangerous, dangerous sin. It's not that they were breaking a dietary law. It's that they were denying their relationship with God. And we hear them profess firmly in a belief in the resurrection. And this is the point of these readings this Sunday, the resurrection from the dead. These Jewish brothers and their mother, who all suffered the same fate, likely had their tongues chopped off, had their hands chopped off before they were put to death. They were willing to suffer that fate because they knew there would be a resurrection. I'm willing to endure pain. I'm willing to endure suffering. I'm willing to die even to this life because I know this isn't it. And I know in the grand scheme of things, this is not going to be much. If someone asked you to do something uncomfortable for 1 minute out of your day, would you go stand outside on a cold winter day and nothing but your bathrobe? Would you go do that for a minute and the rest of your day, it won't bother you? We might say, sure, I can deal with a minute of freezing cold and whatnot, and I'll come in and all will be fine. In a sense, that's the way we should view this life. This life that we're living is no more than a minute compared to eternity, and even less than that. That we can really put up with and deal with anything in this life, because what is to come is so much greater. This is nothing. And these brothers recognize that. You want to kill me? Fine, kill me, because it's nothing in comparison with what God is going to do. He's going to raise us up. Jesus today speaks to members of his own people who do not believe in a resurrection. They were a faction called the Sadducees. And so they're mocking him today with their question. And they're blending the Jewish law in with this idea of the resurrection. Oh, you believe in the resurrection. Well, what about this case? Someone marries a woman and dies, and the next brother comes along and marries her and dies, and the next one does, and 7 people marry this woman. Well, first of all, I'm asking myself, what man, by the 3rd one, is going to continue this pattern? But if they all do and die, these Sadducees are basically mocking Jesus and saying, you believe in a resurrection? Well, how can they all be married if there is a resurrection? It doesn't make sense. And Jesus assures them that the life after this one is so much different than what you expect it to be. That it is not like this experience, it is so much greater. We won't need marriage in the kingdom. We marry in this life because it is a sign of God's union with his people. We marry because it is one of the deepest expressions of love that we are capable of. And so we do that. But in the kingdom, we are going to be so united with one another that marriage is going to look like nothing. That marriage would be taking 10 steps backwards. Our union, our communion with one another and with God will be so perfect that marriage would sound silly. And so Jesus speaks to these people today and says, there is a resurrection. It is the God of the living who draws all people to himself and unites them with himself. That's our call. We are called to be united with God, deep in communion with him. And so we stand here today and we realize it would be better to die than to commit a sin. Because to commit sin is to separate ourselves from God. And then truly we have nothing. If we die, we remain joined to God for eternity and have more than we ever could. That is the faith. As we come here today in the darkness of faith, we trust, we believe in the resurrection from the dead. And that's what allows us to go through whatever persecutions. And thank God, we don't have to face what those brothers did in the first reading. We can tolerate them, whatever comes our way, because we know that what follows is better than we could possibly imagine.